Okay, hello everybody. My name's Jerry Kreiner. Used to be your UROP student, used to be a peer advisor. Currently the research poster guru, here to help you all today. Make something outstanding, right? So if you haven't already done so, everybody needs this website. Also need to find Illustrator. Now, no matter where you are at the university in different computer labs, the Illustrator program may be buried in different folders and may be difficult to find. But no matter where you are, if you just go down to the search engine right there, by hitting the little Windows icon, this comes up, hit the search engine, you type in ILL, and Illustrator will come up no matter what folder it's buried in. So before we get started using Illustrator, I just wanted to kind of go through and talk about what I think makes a good poster. Now, realize that everything I say today is just my opinion. Your sponsor may have completely different opinions as me. So they will overrule me on all my opinions today except for one, and that's the size. The size must be 40 by 32 or 32 by 40 for all UROP posters. And I'll talk more about that later. So according to your sponsor, this may be a totally acceptable poster. It has all the criteria. If I was to make a bullet point of what makes a good research poster, it has a large title, it has a logo, it has all the appropriate categories such as background, methods, analysis, results, discussion, limitations, future work. As far as background, you can pick out your own titles. It doesn't really matter exactly what the titles are. So this could be abstract. This could be called introduction. So it's just kind of a personal preference on that. Everything is separated into different categories. It reads from top left to bottom right. However, I would never go up to this research poster at the symposium. It has way too much text on it. It's intimidating and uninteresting. It has some graphic information here, but it's all numbers. It's not visual at all. And it really doesn't help you at all at the symposium. So you want to create a poster that helps you at the symposium because you're going to be standing right in front of it and somebody comes up to you and wants you to describe your poster and describe your research to them. And this isn't really going to help you. If somebody asks you about results, you're not going to say, well, just read this paragraph about results. So you want something visual that you can refer to and help you talk about the research that you've been doing. So how many engineers do I have in the room? Only one engineer? I find that hard to believe. Really? Only one engineer in this whole room? Like engineer student? I know you're not engineers yet. Okay, so your sponsor may want you to create a 3-column poster or other disciplines, but it becomes really popular with engineering professors to make these 3-column formatted posters. I am not a fan of them. I have a goal through these workshops to kill the 3-column poster. I don't like them. And they're hard to work with as well. So not only are they not exactly visually interesting, I don't think, but they're really hard to make last-minute changes to. Because one of the hardest things about making this poster is going to be making it for your research sponsor. If you were just making it for yourself and you could make it look like whatever you wanted, this would be really easy. But you're going to be dealing with your sponsor who may want you to get opinions of other people as well. So that's going to involve a lot of last-minute changes. Very likely your sponsor is going to make a last-minute change and you think you're done, and then they're going to say make one more change, one more change, one more change. So it's very difficult to make a 3-column poster uniform and fit in here nicely and fill all the space and fit into these nice, even, symmetrical columns. And then you make a change, they say take a paragraph out, and then you have to spend a whole bunch of time reformatting again to fit into those columns. And then they'll email you and say add this graph in, And then again, most of the stress and the time involvement is going to be reformatting it so it fits in there again. So if you just avoid trying to make it even and symmetrical, you're going to have a much easier time making those last minute changes. And a lot of the suggestions that I give today is going to be focused around making it really easy to make those last minute changes. So those examples I find a lot in common with just plain, boring grocery store receipts, right? They still have the large title. They list all the necessary information so you can understand what's going on. They have logos on them, but not exactly a presentation. We want to create a presentation today. It is not just a research paper. So that first poster that I showed you guys looks kind of to me just like a research paper. They copied pasted 10 pages out of a research paper and put it into their poster, and then they said they were done. So that's not what we're going for. It is not just a PowerPoint. So I will see this type of poster all the time at symposiums where somebody already had a PowerPoint existing from their research, took 9 slides out of it, plopped it onto the poster, and said they were done. If this is really all you're shooting for, you really don't need my help. So I also compare it to possibly a cookbook. So if I bought a cookbook that was formatted like this, I could probably make whatever this is, even though I'm not a very good cook. It lists all the necessary information. It has a large title that stands out, and it's it's numbered or bullet pointed. It has this side column over there. Information is separated. But if I was at a bookstore and wanted to buy a cookbook, I would be much more likely to buy a cookbook that was illustrated like this, right? And not only would I be able to understand it, but it builds confidence in when I'm reading it. If I can read something and see graphic and pictorial information right next to it, I feel like I know that I did it right and I understood what was going on better. So this is also a research poster. Ironically, it has nothing to do with Twinkies. Twinkies was just a metaphor for what this project was really about. However, if this was at a symposium, I definitely want to go up and find out what it's about. This is fascinating to me. And probably everybody that goes to the symposium is going to be talking about this poster. So I don't expect you all to make 3-dimensional posters, but just comparing the first example to the second example, I mean, which poster are you guys going to go up to? So, the first thing, realizing that the UROP Symposium, I think there's going to be around 110 posters per hour, and people are walking around. They're going to look at 2 things. They're going to look at the title, but they're also just going to look at, what looks interesting to them graphically. So the less content and the more interesting the poster looks, the more successful you'll be. And even if you don't get your way this time with your sponsor making a research poster, hopefully you guys are making many more presentations in the future, and you can take some of this information with you. So let's go Illustrator now. Everybody hopefully has it open already. And if you go File and New, so many of the things that I'm going to show you in Illustrator may seem like we're touching on a very simple, obvious subject, but don't get too far ahead of me, because I'm going to show you tricks to even the simplest things. So you just type in a poster or something like that for a name, and change the units to inches. The width and the height, again, is going to be 40 by 32. But very important that you change these units to inches. So by default, Illustrator is going to open up every time, the first time, having the units as points. So very important that you remember to change it to inches, because if you don't change it to inches, your poster is going to come out smaller than a business card. That's not ideal presentation size. So make sure you change that to inches. and hit OK, and you get a blank poster. So we're going to go through and make a poster twice. The first, realizing everybody's here is probably at different skill levels. We'll go through, make a poster once with some more simplistic tools, throw that away, start over again, and use some more advanced tools and make something more visually interesting. So the first tool that we'll use is right here, called the rectangle tool. If you click on that, hold down, you get a list of all these shapes. So the first shape we'll use is the rectangle tool on top. Take your cursor over here, hold it down, drag it across the screen, and make a title bar. If you leave it highlighted like that, all shapes have 3 controls, and they're right up here next to each other. So this control is your inside color, next to it is your outside color, and next to that is your stroke. So we change the inside color, the outside color, and if you change the stroke to maybe 20, you'll see the line around the shape get really thick. And then we'll go back and make all the other shapes kind of like they were paragraph boxes. So rounded rectangle tool. Ellipse. Polygon. Star. And then we're going to use this black arrow, the selection tool. The upper right hand or upper left hand corner is the black arrow, the selection tool. Now this black arrow selection tool is really useful in Illustrator. So most of the time, if somebody's having a technical difficulty in one of these workshops and I come over, the solution to whatever half the time, the solution to the technical difficulty that they're having is just hit the black arrow and then try what you're doing again. So if you're having trouble and you don't understand why, try hitting that black arrow and then try what you were doing again, and it'll probably fix it. Stay away from the white arrow. It's for more advanced users of Illustrator. It's really not necessary. I don't use it. And it'll just frustrate you if you try to use it at first, so just stay away from it. Stick with the black arrow. And then you can select your shapes and move them around more into place. You can select one and change the colors. Of the 3 tools and the stroke. All right, now we're going to put in some text. So right here is your type tool, and there's 2 different ways to put in text. So the first way, we're just going to put in a title. So if you hit the type tool, click once somewhere over here in the title bar, a very small cursor will come in because it's only a 12-point font. Over here is your font size, and it's only set to 12. So we want to change it to 200. The drop-down menu only goes to 72, but you want your title to be as large as possible. So we can just manually change it to 200. Your cursor gets really large. Give it a name. So some of your titles of your poster may be very long sentences, might have 20 words in it. So how do you make your title of your poster really large font size if it's so long? Just put it on 3 different lines. So this seems like a really obvious answer, but I get the question all the time on how do you have a large font size for a really long title. Sometimes I think maybe students just get tunnel vision and aren't seeing the obvious sometimes. So just separate it onto 3 different lines. Don't keep trying to squeeze it onto one line. But it's really important that the title is larger than anything else on the poster. So many times at the symposium, I will see the word abstract twice as big as the font size of the title. So that's not really what we're shooting for. So if you select your title with the black arrow, your font or your text has the same three controls that we were using earlier with the text. So you have your inside color and your outside color, and the stroke of the thickness around the letters. If you change it to about an 8, it looks good. So this is another way to make the title stand out more than all the other text on your poster. So hit the type tool again, and we're going to make text in a completely different way. This is for all of your content. So what we just did by clicking once with the type tool is only for one-liners or one-worders, right, like the title. So anything that is in paragraph form or a lot of content, you want to make it in a completely different way, and it's really important, and I'll show you why. So clicking the type tool, we're going to click and drag like we're making a shape and create a text box, like so. Be careful not to click on the border of one of the shapes. If you click on the border of one of the shapes is going to disappear and become a text box. So stay away from the border and click and drag and make a text box. Now the font size is still set at 200, so we're going to bring it down to, say, 36. 24 is also good font size for content. 21 is okay. I would say 18 is the absolute minimum, but really I wouldn't want to go that small. There's maybe some older people at the symposium that are going to have to read this poster, so be courteous to them as well. And if you are going down to an 18 font size, your whole poster is probably filled up with too much content anyway. So I would suggest you reduce the content until you can make a larger font size. And put in some content. Okay, we're going to put in a logo now. So if you go to the UROP website and go to additional resources, we'll hit this link for U of M logos. And this is the official University of Michigan logo that they want everyone to use for everything. So there used to be a bunch of choices for the U of M logo, but they changed that about a year and a half ago. And this is what they would like you to use. So you can save it a couple different ways. You can drag it onto your desktop like that. That's the easiest way. That's the way I usually do it. You can also right-click on it and do Save Image As, and then save it to your desktop. But what you don't want to do is, well, there's two things you don't want to do. You don't want to click and drag it directly into your Illustrator file. That will cause problems. You also don't want to copy image and then paste it into your Illustrator file. That will cause problems. If you do either one of those ways that you shouldn't do, it can come in really pixelated. It can be a solid black image. It can have all kinds of problems. It can come in really small. So always save it somewhere, and then we're going to place it into Illustrator in a very specific way. Ideally, you want to keep everything in the same folder all together all the time, and don't move it out of that folder. So you should have your Illustrator file in one folder with everything else that you're working with. So all of your content, all your pictures, graphs, and logos, keep them all in the same folder together. Go File and Place. Find the logo, select it, but don't place it yet. So we're just selecting it, but don't place it. The first time you place an image into Illustrator, it's going to automatically, by default, have this link box checked. We want to uncheck that link box. Now, the reason why that link box is checked is for advanced users of Illustrator, graphic designers who are doing multiple things and multitasking. The reason why it would be checked and how it's helpful probably will not apply to any of you. So it would be if I was modifying images that I'd already placed into the poster somewhere else, like in Photoshop, I wouldn't have to replace those images anymore. They would just automatically update. More than likely, you guys won't be doing things like that. If you do, I recommend you just replacing it manually. The problem will be is if anything ever gets moved ever from the original place that you placed it, so out of the folder or into a different folder, the Illustrator file gets moved, the image gets moved, anything happens related to either one of them, you will open up your Illustrator file and it will be a blank poster. All your images will be gone. It'll give you an error message saying we can't find any of those images. So if you just uncheck this link box, you will not have those problems. Your images will always be there. So once you select it, just hit place. And it comes in kind of big, so please nobody have the University of Michigan logo this big on your poster. We want to shrink it down. And if you click on the corner of it and drag it, you can resize it. However, you can also warp it. So if you did warp it on accident, you can just hit Control-Z, just like in any other program in Word or Excel. Just hit Control-Z, and it goes back to the original form. How to make sure you're not warping it is when you size it, hold down Shift, and it'll stay uniform no matter what. And maybe make it about that size. Put it in the corner, or maybe put it in the corner down there or something. Okay, you can close out that one. We're going to start over. File and New. All right, so when we start a new one, it's remembering everything we did the last time because we're still on the same computer and we haven't closed it down or anything. So it's remembering that it's 40 by 32, and it's remembering that the units are inches. But you guys need to remember that when you go somewhere else, in some other computer lab on some other day, it's not going to remember that those units are inches. And it's very important that you change it to inches the first time. So you just hit OK. We get a new poster starting from scratch. All right, now we want to go to a Google search engine. And we're going to find an image that covers your entire 40 by 32 inch poster. We want to find a cool background image. I think plain white posters are kind of boring. So I really recommend using Google search engine over the others. Google will give you better results and have some more user-friendly tools incorporated in with it. So just type in a couple keywords out of the title of your poster. If you're not getting good results, try a different couple of keywords out of the title of your poster. If your poster title seems very interesting to you and all you're coming up with is pictures of dead rats because that's what your project's about, and you don't want to put a gigantic picture of a dead rat on your poster, then just type in the words background image. So if you type in background image, you'll get lots of really cool, interesting results. So if you find a picture that you like and you hold the cursor over it, don't select it yet, but just hold the cursor over it, you'll get these numbers across the bottom. This one says 1920 by 1080. If you're going to find a picture that covers your entire poster, you want it to be at the minimum 1000 by 1000. No smaller than 1000 by 1000. If it's just a small image that's going in the corner of your poster, you really don't need to worry about the pixelation size. But if it's going to cover the entire poster that's 40 by 32, you need to worry about the pixelation size. Because you're not going to realize that it was a poor quality image and that it's going to come out pixelated until after it's already printed and it's too late. You're working with it at this size, the monitor size, the entire time. It looks fine on the monitor, but the first time you print it out really huge, you've already paid for it, and then you realize that you have all these pixelation squares on your poster and it doesn't look really good. So make sure that if you're going to cover an entire poster with an image that it's at least 1,000 by 1,000. And then you click on it once and find the larger image. Never drag or save this image. This is just a thumbnail image. And no matter if it says that the pixelation is 10,000 by 10,000, it's still going to be a poor quality image if you grab the small one from the search engine. You want to go find the original. This is the one that's 1980 by 1060. But even though it meets the requirements of the minimum size, I still want to find if we can find a better quality image. So hit over here and go search by image. And then you get these choices, all sizes, small, medium, large. Hit large. And there's all kinds more of those images out there. And I found one that's even better quality. So this one's 2280 by 1800, so even better. And that's what we want to use. So again, don't grab that one though. Click on it once, find the original, and save it or drag it off onto your desktop. And then we're going to place it just like we did the logo a few minutes ago. So go File, Place, select the image. The link box is already not checked because, again, it's remembering what the last thing that we did is. But again, when you're somewhere else in some other computer lab on some other day, it's not going to remember any of this, and that link box is going to be checked the first time. So you want to make sure that that box is unchecked. A way to safeguard it in case you forgot to uncheck the box is just to make sure you never move anything and keep it all in one folder together. Hit place, and there's our background image. So in addition to Control Z to back up what you just did, you can also hit Control minus and Control plus to move it forward and back it up. All right, we're going to size the image appropriately now. So if you hit Control minus, it'll back up a little bit. Proportionally, my image does not fit the poster correctly because I have those white bars on the top and the bottom. I do not want to make it fit like this and just drag and warp the world. I want to keep the world looking like it's supposed to look, like a spear. So I want to hold down Shift and just leave extra of the image hanging off the edges. Whatever's hanging off the edges will not print. Now this image is really dark, so I'm never going to be able to put text on this and have people read it. So there's a couple of things that we're going to do to make sure you can read your text and still see the background image. So the first thing that you can do is select the image with the black arrow and change the opacity to something less. Now mine was really dark. Your background image may not need any adjusting at all. If it's very light or baby blue or something, maybe you just leave it at 100%. But it is an option to change the opacity of the picture. So I'm pretty much done with this background image. It's been sized, the opacity's changed. In the future, in the short-term future, I'm probably not going to make that many changes. So we just want to lock it down and forget about it because you keep selecting it by accident when you're working on the poster. So we want to mess with these layers over here. So second tool from the bottom on the right-hand side is your layers tool. If you click it once, that little window pops out. All right, once this window pops out, we want to use this, the Create New Layer tool. It's got a square with the corner flipped up on the bottom. Hit that 5 times. And you will create 5 new layers. Now the way things stack up on the poster is the same way they stack up in layers. So anything in layer 2 is above layer 1 in the order of the layers. Anything in layer 2 will also be above whatever's on layer 1 when it stacks up on the poster. So if your background image was solid and it was on the top on layer 6, it would cover everything in your poster and you wouldn't be able to see it. So background image would always be on the top, text would always be on the, or background image would always be on the bottom, and text would always be on the top. So if you select layer 1, you get control over things on your poster. Control is always good. If you hit the eyeball, you can turn it on and off. Right next to the eyeball is that empty square or that empty box. If you hit that, it will lock down that layer. So anything on that layer you will no longer be able to select. So if you hit the black arrow, I cannot select that image no more. So we can work on other things and not select the background image by mistake anymore. We got it locked down. You can move up to layer 2, and we will put more things into the poster on layer 2. So we're going to go back to the shape tool, which is now in the form of the last shape that I made. So the last shape that I made was a star. And that's what it looks like. So if we hold it down, we get all the options again. We're going to make some text boxes. I really like the way that the rounded rectangle tool looks. So if we take the rounded rectangle and make a title bar, and we make some text boxes. So you can imagine if you made a poster that looked like this over the 3 uniform columns, it's going to be much easier to make a change to a poster that's formatted like this originally. If your sponsor says add in a paragraph or take away a picture, it's going to be much easier to do that really quickly without being frustrated if it's formatted like this. It's easier to rearrange things. If it's 3 uniform, perfect columns, it's going to be very frustrating. So then we're going to select all of those white boxes. And you can do that one of 2 ways. You can select the black arrow, drag it across the screen, and select all of them, or you can select them one by one by holding down Shift. So you can hold Shift and select them all. All right, so now that we've selected all of our new text boxes, and they don't necessarily need to be white either, so depending on your color scheme, maybe these text boxes are baby blue or something, and we will change the opacity to something lighter. So now we can put text on top of these text boxes. We can see the text really well, and we can still see my pretty background image. So before, with all the solid white boxes, we weren't going to be able to see the background image very good, so now we can see everything. We can see the text and we can see the background. I think it looks good if you change the opacity of the title bar to something different, make it stand out a little bit. And we can lock that layer down and move up to layer 3. If you double click on the layer, you can change the name of the layer, and we're going to put text on it. So we're moved up to layer 3, or the text layer. We click once to put in a title, make it 200 size font, hit the black arrow, move it into place, change the inside color, outside color, and then we'll make some content by clicking and dragging, changing that font size to something smaller. All right, poster's looking good. You can see text really good, right? The title stands out really good. So I'm going to show you how to make crazy shapes and make content take the form of whatever that shape is. So for the time being, let's lock down our text layer, unlock your box layer, select the box layer. Whatever layer you're working on has to be selected. So we're working with the box layer, or maybe the shape layer is a better name for what that is. And in order to do this trick, you need 2 shapes. make something for your second shape that is not a rectangle. So either the ellipse, the polygon, or the star. And then move it over the edge, like you're taking a bite out of the shape below it. Don't move it in the middle like this. We don't want to make a donut scenario where we're cutting out a hole in the middle, because what we're about to do with the text, it will not like that. So we want to move it so it's taking a bite out of the side, like so. All right, once you got both your shapes, let's go to Window. And about 9 tools from the bottom is Pathfinder. And another toolbox will pop up. The Pathfinder toolbox is about, if you hit Window, it's about 9 tools from the bottom on all the window options. And then we're going to use these 4 tools right here. So what these tools do are illustrated pretty well. So the little icon is a diagram of what it's going to do. And if you hold the mouse over the individual ones, it gives a title of that tool. So this one's called the Unite tool, and that's what it does. It's going to take 2 shapes, unite them together, and make 1 shape. Right next to that is the minus front tool. So that's what it's going to do. It's going to take the shape in front and minus it out of the one in back. And that's the one we're going to use for this. First, you have to select the 2 shapes you're working with. Once you select the 2 shapes you're working with, hit the minus front tool, and it takes a bite out of it. Everyone good on that? Select the 2 shapes first, then hit the minus front tool, and it should work. So now that we all have a crazy shape, whatever your crazy shape looks like, we're going to make a text box that takes the form of that exact same shape. So in order to do that, you select your crazy shape and copy it. And edit, paste in place. So if you just hit paste, it'll just show up anywhere. But if you hit paste in place, it's going to go right back into that same spot. And now we have 2 of those crazy shapes right on top of each other. And if you go back, select your type tool. We're going to do what I told you not to do earlier. So earlier I was saying don't select on the border of an object because it'll disappear and create a text box. But that's what we want to do now. So you have 2 right on top of each other. If you hit the type tool, select on the border, one of them will disappear and turn into a text box. And the text will take the form of whatever that shape is, no matter what it is. Now later on, if you want to make changes, you can change the shape and the text will not warp. If you select them both together, it will warp. So it'll warp the letters. So you want to make sure you set up all your text in a very specific way. So if you wanted to modify this to be something different, you would have to move them one at a time. Like so. If you move them both together at the same time, it's going to warp the text. It's also going to warp the text, which I forgot to say earlier. If you click once, instead of making a text box, it will just go on for infinity. So, and you may think, well, I forgot, how did he say make the text box? I'm just going to do it manually and type and keep hitting enter, and forming the paragraphs manually myself works just as good, looks just as good, no problem. Until later on when you want to make a change, this type of text box where you clicked once will not allow you to change the form of the paragraph. It's going to warp the text. The one where you click and drag and make a text box, you can change that. Whoops. Got our text layer locked down. Unlock the text layer. And no matter what I make this triangle, the text takes the form of that and does not warp. So really important that you set up the text the right way the first time, because you won't even realize that you did it wrong until later on when you're trying to make changes, and it'll be too late. You'll have to start from scratch making new text boxes. So moving things from layer to layer. So just like with any program, there's probably multiple ways to do things. The easiest way that I find to move things from one layer to another, this text that we just created for our crazy shape is on the box layer, so I want to move it up to the text layer. Easiest way to do that is go Edit, Cut. So we're going to cut it out of that layer, select the layer we want it to go to, and Edit, Paste in place. But just remember that whatever layers you're working with, make sure they're unlocked and make sure the eyeball's on. So if the eyeball's off and you paste it into place into that layer, it's not going to show up because the eyeball's off. Another useful tool would be to hit View. And about halfway down is the Rulers tool. And hit Show Rulers. It'll give you a ruler across the top and down the side. This can be useful if your sponsor is insisting that you make a uniform 3-column poster. It's also useful for other things like verifying that indeed I am making a 40 by 32 inch poster. So I usually just leave them up all the time. They're not distracting or anything. I like having the rulers on. It can be useful to have them there and placing things where you want them. Oh. How do we get rid of the perspective grid tool? Black arrow didn't work, Control Z didn't work. It's a really obvious answer, but I couldn't figure it out with without Googling it. You just hit the perspective grid tool again and then hit the X. That's the only tool that really gives people troubles. So the other ones should be pretty safe. So now, how do you save your document? So File, Save As. Obviously, you can save it as an Illustrator document, an AI document. But better than that would be to save it as an Adobe PDF. So if you save it as an Adobe PDF, another window will pop up. And saving it as an Adobe PDF, these 3 boxes will be checked by default. And what those 3 boxes mean is that your Adobe PDF is also an Illustrator file. So it's either one. It's whatever you want it to be. It can, if you take this type of PDF, you right-click on it, say Open with Illustrator, it will still open up. It'll still have all the layers there. You'll still be able to move the images around, modify it. It is essentially no different. However, you can also use it as a PDF. So if, say, you emailed it or gave it to your professor, they don't have Illustrator on their computer, they don't really want anything to do with Illustrator, they can view it as a PDF, so they don't need Illustrator to view it. The downfall of this type of PDF is that it's a really large file. So in some cases, if you put a lot of work into your poster and a lot of effects, a lot of layers, it may be too large of a file to email. So to make a different type of PDF, just so you can email it to somebody, just a moment in time of your poster to email to somebody, uncheck those 3 boxes, and you can save it as a normal PDF. And it'll be a much reduced file PDF that is no longer, and it's going to warn you about this when you hit save, saving this document, blah, blah, blah. Basically, it's no longer an Illustrator document. That's what it's warning you. So this type of PDF with the 3 boxes unchecked, you can right-click on it and say Open with Illustrator, but it will show up in Illustrator, but you will not be able to modify it in any way. Your layers will be gone, and you won't be able to change it. So I would take this type of PDF. If you're doing the type that you just want to send to your sponsor, I would make a copy of it or change the name, say, so you don't get confused with the two. Because if you're just making a simple PDF to email to somebody, you have to remember that you still need another file that is a workable file. And you see that the excess around the sides, the extra picture is gone. So it's only showing us the 40 by 32 inch poster. This is the type of PDF you should take to print somewhere, is the reduced file PDF. You could run into technical difficulties if you take them a really large Illustrator file. So when you're done, you know it's the last final version approved by your sponsor. Make the reduced file PDF, the simple PDF, and take it to print. Just because it's a reduced file does not mean that it's going to be pixelated in any way. Still high quality images that are going to look good on a poster. It just means you've lost your Illustrator capabilities, which you don't need to print. If you only have approval to print the morning of the symposium, you're probably not going to have a poster for the symposium. I would try to get at least 48 hours before the symposium approval on that poster. You have to realize that there are 13. Never printed out anything large scale format before, you're probably going to be a little bit stressed about this. You've never seen it large before. The entire time you've been looking at it, it's on your computer screen. One good way to test it ahead of time would be to print it out on an 8.5 by 11. Just to see it on actual paper is a good idea. It'll look really, really different. So your computer screen has light shining through it, which means colors and opacities and everything's going to look different. So at least, even if it's not big, it's nice to print it out on a piece of paper to see what that looks like. Let's go back to the UROP poster website. And I'll highlight some of these resources that are on here. So there's a virtual sites handout. Anybody ever used virtual sites before? Knows it exists? Okay, so those of you that don't know about it, it is a website that the University of Michigan offers where you can have a virtual desktop on your own personal computer wherever you are. And it will offer all the programs that the University of Michigan computer labs offer, such as Illustrator, also Excel. Anything that the university has will be on virtual sites. So really good way to another way to access Illustrator other than coming to one of the school's computer labs is to use virtual sites. This handout will show you how to use it to get started your first time. It's pretty easy, pretty user-friendly. One problem that students do run into pretty often is you can get confused about where you're saving things. So when you're using it, essentially you have two desktops. You have your virtual desktop in the browser window. You also have your desktop on your computer. So if you save the file to your virtual desktop and close out that browser window, the file's gone. Computers, you have an icon that has your unique name on it, and you can click on it, click on your unique name again, and go into the folders, and there's stuff that I saved a couple years ago. Another way to access these same files, if you're not on a University of Michigan computer, is to go to mFile. Just Google mFile, you'll find a site that will take you to these files as well. There is the Adobe Illustrator help that the library offers. So they created this website all about Illustrator and making posters and things. It's pretty comprehensive, offers lots of good. There are also poster examples on the website. So if you click poster examples, you will see two examples of rough drafts. So a common question I get is, what is a rough draft, or how rough is a rough draft of a poster? So there's two examples of that.